Hello everyone! Today I'm going to review Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. I'm sure some of you are saying, finally! Directed by Adam Wingard, this most recent installment of Legendary's MonsterVerse came out at the end of March this year. I've heard it called Godzilla x Kong. I've also heard that it's supposed to be said Godzilla Kong, ignore the X. That's weird to me, so I don't think I'm going to do that. But at least everyone agrees that the shortened version is GXK. The New Empire subtitle is more or less disposable. While Godzilla is taking care of business upstairs, Kong's reigning supreme over the Hollow Earth. But as the only one of his kind, he's lonely for companionship, and that makes him miserable. A raging toothache drives him to the surface, at the same time Monarch's picking up a distress call from deep within the Hollow Earth. A small team follows Kong back to his domain in search of the source, uncovering a new threat to the Titan equilibrium. I didn't see this when it came out in theaters, and somehow, amazingly, I managed to avoid spoilers, so this was my first time seeing the film, and it was fresh for me, and it was entertaining. There were things I liked. There were also things, not that I disliked, but that I just wasn't into so much. It is a wild fantasy adventure that moves fast and crams in a lot of places, creatures, and dilemmas. It's big, it's flashy, even the logos at the beginning are brilliant and colorful. Adam Wingard also directed the previous film, Godzilla vs. Kong, and I appreciate the stylistic continuity. It's got a similar mood, similar sense of humor, similar use of neon. The vibe is still inexplicably 80s, driven by a synthwave score, plus the strategic and fun use of some 70s, 80s hits. It's got good energy. It's better than the last one on that front, I'd say. It had more pep in its step. I have been fussy in the past because I was under the impression that Godzilla vs. Kong was meant to be the finale for the MonsterVerse, and then all of a sudden they were making another movie and they made a show. It was naive of me to believe that they would stop when that movie made money and showed us the Hollow Earth, which literally opens up a new world of possibilities for creatures and conflict. Of course they're going to milk that for all that they can, and in the last couple years they've been doing exactly that. The Hollow Earth is awe-inspiring once again, and they've filled it with a menagerie of strange and ugly creatures. They also introduce uncharted territory called the Subterranean Realm. I don't know how you can have a subterranean realm within your subterranean realm. We're already underground, right? But like many things in this movie, I just try to roll with it. The visuals and the action scenes are dazzling, proving that with a lot of money and a lot of talented special effects people working on your CGI, you can do anything. I think that's already well proven, though, to the extent that one could say that since it's now relatively easy to create incredible worlds like this via computer, they're not so amazing anymore. They've become kind of ho-hum. But I don't watch a lot of movies like this, so it's still impressive to me. It would be more impressive if it was real. I can't help thinking not the whole time, but sometimes I can't help thinking, this is all fake. Nothing in this shot is real. I do want to know if anyone else has noticed that the edges of the frame are often kind of blurry. I streamed this in UHD on Prime, and the picture was great, very crisp and clear for scenes with real people and for scenes that are 100% CG. However, I started noticing that in some scenes, actually quite a lot of scenes, on the fringes of the frame, and even further in sometimes, the image is blurry. The focal point is sharp, but the image gets distorted as you move away from the center. I mentioned this to my mom, but she didn't seem to see it, so is it just me? Am I crazy? Is there something wrong with me? Please tell me someone else knows what I'm talking about, and if you can explain it, that would be great. If there's some reason why it looks this way, if it has to do with camera or lens or format, or is this a product of green screen and everything in the background being fake and they filled it in and they just weren't as detailed with the things on the edges, and I'm not supposed to notice. If that's the case, it's understandable, but it still doesn't seem desirable to me, because big picture, everything looked great, but then when you scrutinize these little things, it starts to look not so good. Like I said, I don't watch a lot of movies like this, so maybe this is normal and I just don't know. Regardless of some arbitrary fuzziness, the film is a spectacle, but not one where you're totally disengaged from the characters. Personalities we've met before are consistent, newcomers are sufficiently engaging, and everybody, human and Titan alike, gets a chance to shine. Unquestionably, Kong is the protagonist, the hero, dealing with the same problem he had in the last film, and we join him in his pursuit of other monkeys. I heard people marvel that this was kind of like watching a silent film. There are long stretches without any dialogue, and that is impressive that they've made this giant monkey so expressive and emotive and relatable that he is able to carry the bulk of the film without speaking a word. Kong at last finds animals just like him, but it doesn't go the way he hoped. The brutish apes try to kill him, and then he's saddled with this little guy, who's less cute baby, more juvenile delinquent. Their relationship has a good arc, though. It turned out to be a heartwarming thing, and it was nice, so I guess I'll forgive the little monkey for past bad behavior. It's kind of a long time before they unveil the main villain, the Scar King, a smug, sadistic ruler of apes trapped in a subterranean prison. According to the exposition dump, a long time ago, Godzilla went to war with these giant apes, defeated them, and locked them away, where the vengeful Scar King reigns, hungry to fight his way back to the surface. I feel bad for anybody who chose this moment to go to the bathroom. The Scar King has a creepy, unusual design. He's kinda weird looking. His arms and legs are exceptionally long and skinny, and when you see him next to Kong, who has this big barrel chest, his proportions seem a trifle bizarre. I know we're talking about a monkey here, but I don't know, it was strange. And then his poses are a bit, I don't know, quirky, overacted. Let's put it this way, if he was a human being, I would say he was being hammy. I would say he's chewing the scenery, and I'm not sure if this performance is fun or just way too over the top. The Scar King, I don't know, he's intimidating because he seems insane and he might kill anybody or anything for any reason at all, but there's also something about him that's just kind of ridiculous. The way they're able to make all these animals emote is amazing, it really is. But sometimes, the way they communicate and broadcast their feelings is too human. Especially with the little monkey and the Scar King. There were a couple times where I felt we ventured into the uncanny valley. There were a couple spots where I was like, no, this feels uncomfortable. Godzilla doesn't really have that problem. The MonsterVerse has never sought to make him as relatable, so mostly he just looks some kind of angry. Most of you know that I'm here for Godzilla, not Kong. I like Kong well enough, but he's not a favorite, he never has been. The only other MonsterVerse entry I didn't see in the theater was Kong Skull Island, so there you go. I was afraid that Godzilla would be a secondary character again, despite his name coming first in the title, but I was pleased to find that there was more of him than I'd been led to expect. He's still playing second fiddle to Kong, but he does get credit for saving the world on a regular basis, and it is funny that after a hard day's work he curls up in the Roman Colosseum and goes to sleep. I know the change to pink atomic breath teased in the trailers had some people worried, but it's all explained in the film. The pink comes as a result of radiation overload. He starts hitting up all these nuclear plants to charge his battery, and his last stop is the Arctic, where he gets rid of this sea monster so he can soak up the high concentration of radiation. I suspect they went with pink because they needed something to contrast with the bright blue to show the difference, but they couldn't use red because they did that with Mechagodzilla. I'm not crazy about the pink, but it is striking, and it does fit well with the neon color palette. I'm not totally sold on the way they're making Godzilla move in these films, running around and even going on all fours in a couple shots like a stegosaurus. It's a bit odd, and experts will say a creature like him could never move that quickly. But of course, this movie has no desire to be realistic when it comes to the action scenes. When this came out, fans quickly started claiming that this is essentially a tribute to the Showa era, which is commonly regarded as the goofiest and most preposterous period of Godzilla movies, and therefore it should be judged accordingly. I partly agree with that description, by the way. Yes, the Showa era had silly movies, but it also had ones that were meant to be taken seriously, and the Heisei and Millennium eras had just as much goofiness, but I digress. I do see the Showa era connection, but I also got a Millennium era vibe. Those movies were similarly over the top and fast paced, and I thought the paranormal themes, including telepathy and psychic visions, were like a page out of the Heisei book. And that title drop was definitely more of a shout out to the Heisei and Millennium eras, so I'm not completely on board with just labeling this a modern Showa era movie. I think it's trying to pay tribute to all the Godzilla movies of the past, while still being a Kong movie instead of a Godzilla movie. Let's move on to the human characters. I was not excited when I found out Rebecca Hall and Brian Tyree Henry would be returning, since last time I thought she was kind of dull and he was annoying, but I liked them both better here. Their characters are more likable, more relatable, and they have decent growth. I appreciated the way they acknowledged how different she looks, and his comic relief landed better this time. I especially enjoyed his rant about internet trolls, including his beef with a guy called GhidorahStan64. By the way, I took a screenshot of the titles of his podcasts. Notice one called Planet X on the Horizon? Is that an Easter egg, teasing a return of the Exilians? Dan Stevens co-stars as a wacky Titan vet, adopting an Australian accent and clearly having a blast. I know he's been in a bunch of big Hollywood movies now, but to me, he'll always be, first and foremost, Matthew Crawley in Downton Abbey. He's charming here, an endearing nutjob with a love of adventure and nature, who makes an interesting contrast with Brian Tyree Henry's paranoid conspiracy theorist. These three are joined on their trek by Kaylee Hoddle as the Iwi girl who has a special bond with Kong, and Alex Ferns as their grouchy, businesslike guide, who is also kind of deranged. From what these movies show us, you have to be at least a little crazy to work for Monarch. This was one of my favorite scenes, when they plunge into the portal after Kong, backed by Golden Earring's Twilight Zone, and you get different reactions from the three guys in the craft. I felt Godzilla vs. Kong had a pretty weak cast, with bland and forgettable characters, and a couple egregiously bad performances. This movie didn't have that problem. I've gotta say, though, at a certain point, my interest started petering out. I think it happened in the middle of Kong and the Scar King's smackdown. I suddenly found myself thinking, ugh, I hope this ends soon so we can move on to the next thing. I was also glad when Kong and Godzilla's fight at the Great Pyramids finally ended, because it was getting old, and it seemed like a waste of all that power Godzilla had stored up. And then there was only a pause between that and the climactic war, with its long zero-gravity fight, and then the long fight in Brazil. I do think these are creative and well-choreographed fight scenes. They look cool. They did a good job making them visually and thematically appealing. And thank goodness, though the climax has a lot going on at once, it's all contained in one place. I just get restless with this stuff. Watching things pummel each other doesn't do it for me. It doesn't matter if it's man, titan, alien, bird, beast, or fish. I get tired of it when a fight scene goes on too long or gets repetitive. And it doesn't help when it just looks like footage from a video game. Something else I'm not into. I'm not saying I was bored for the final third of the movie, but I was ready for it to be done. Its runtime is less than 2 hours, but it felt longer when the fight kept going and going. That said, I did like seeing everybody band together as a team. That was nice, and it was like the climax of the last movie dialed up. I might have heard it mentioned that, spoiler, Mothra makes an appearance, but if I did, I forgot, so it was still a surprise. She comes to the rescue several times, and although 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters is still my favorite of the MonsterVerse, I think this Mothra design is better. She looks more like herself, more defined, and she gets more opportunity to show her strengths. The other big addition is a titan named Shimo, held captive by the Scar King who forces her to fight his enemies. Shimo is kind of like Godzilla, but a quadruped, and she breathes ice instead of fire. It's her attack that leads to Kong getting his yellow arm augmentation, which looks exactly like an Infinity Gauntlet. I didn't even see those movies, and I recognized that. What's heartwarming about Shimo's fate is that once she's freed by Godzilla, she turns around and helps the good guys. And when the orgy of PG-13 violence is over, she returns with Kong and the little squirt to the monkey realm. Presumably, Kong is going to become their new benevolent leader, but I can see some of the old guard bucking against that, which could be fodder for a sequel. Adam Wingard has said he won't be back to direct another one, but this movie did quite well at the box office, and I can't imagine Warner Brothers quitting while they're ahead. Some of you may remember I posted a video back in March, which was meant to just let my regular viewers know that I wouldn't be doing a first impressions video on this one. I hardly ever go to the movies, but I did venture out for the last 3 Godzilla films, so I figured people might be wondering if I would see this one as well. They might be expecting this video, and I wanted to give them a heads up that I would be doing something else that weekend, and that I probably wouldn't be reviewing this movie within the next month. And I shared a list of reasons for my decision. I didn't expect that video to get as many views as it did, and I didn't anticipate that there would be a trend of videos on YouTube about toxicity and division within the Godzilla fandom. I got some comments from just a few people who maybe had never seen me before, who watched some or perhaps all of the video, who were mad about what they perceived to be a negative, judgmental take on a movie that I hadn't even watched. It wasn't a review, though, and it wasn't a protest against the MonsterVerse. I said that I was gonna see the movie. I just was saying that, hey, I would rather wait and watch this at home with my mom in a few months, and here's a bunch of reasons why. Maybe I shouldn't have included the reasons why. I think that some of those reasons set people off. I didn't intend for that to happen, but, well, this is the risk you take when you come on the internet and share a bunch of opinions. I ended up unlisting the video after a while, since it wasn't relevant after the first week or two anyway, and then I didn't have to deal with it anymore. So if you go looking for it, you won't find it. Now, having seen the film in the quiet and comfort of my own home, I know which of my predictions were accurate and which were not. I definitely think my concerns about sensory overload were justified. This movie is loud and dazzling and bright, and past experience tells me that I would have left the theater overwhelmed and overstimulated with strained eyes, wonky ears, and a pounding head. But at home, I found it easier to take, which means I was able to enjoy it more. It's an exhilarating ride no matter how you watch it, with its vibrant colors, fantastic visuals, fast-paced action, likable characters, fun side banter, and sometimes hilarious music choices. I may not have loved it, but I do appreciate that it's a lively movie that doesn't take itself seriously at all. It knows what it is, and it doesn't care. It just has fun with it. And if you embrace that spirit, you'll have fun with it too. Those are my thoughts on Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts on this movie in the comments below if you've seen it, and I'll be back next week, probably to tell you what else I saw this month. Thanks for watching.